Hello, hey everybody. Thank you for joining me on this video on the Open Spanish. My name is Charles, and okay, let's get started. So in this video, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you how to reach the Open Spanish in your own games. And then I'm going to teach you some theory for white so that you could play versus this system successfully. So after e4, black typically plays e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles. And when black plays knight takes c4, we reach the Open Spanish. And well, what could we say about this opening? It's really a counter-attacking opening, and it leads to very rich dynamic and strategic play. So with that said, white here typically plays d4 to open the e-file for the rook, after which black plays b5, a very precise move, bishop b3, and now d5, protecting his knight on e4 and also establishing a pawn center. So white now recaptures on e5, threatening the pawn on d5, after which black is forced to play bishop to e6 defending. Here, white has many alternatives. The move that I'm going to recommend is knight b to d2. And black now has two options, knight c5 or bishop to e7. Let's start off by looking at knight to c5. We play c3, d4. Now the move that I recommend is knight to g5. Are we sacrificing a piece? For the moment we are, but we should typically get it back or see some dividends on that on this return or investment, basically. Black now has three options. He could play queen takes knight, bishop d5, or pawn takes c3. Let's look at the two bad moves first. Pawn takes c3. This was a game between Garry Kasparov and Vishy Anand. Kasparov now continued with knight e6, pawn takes c3, queen d3. And here Kasparov taught us how to play this position. We play for an attack, bishop c2, queen c3, and knight to b3, double exclamation mark. The idea is to sacrifice the rook for an attack, a massive king set attack. Knight takes b3, bishop takes b3. Now we have two moves. We could capture the rook, or we could play knight to d4. If queen takes rook, then we play queen h5 check, g6, queen f3, threatening the knight on c6, knight to d8, queen to f6, rook g8, and after bishop takes e6, we have a winning attack. For instance, if bishop e7, we win the queen by playing bishop d7 check, and after king takes e6. So going back, knight b3, bishop b3, knight d4. This is another move, but we still have the initiative after queen to g4, queen takes rook, bishop e6. And now there are different ways to play. Black can play bishop c5, he could play c5, rook to d8. On most of these moves, the move that we're going to play is bishop to h6, after which white has just a crushing attack, even after black sacrifices his queen for the rook. So going back, the next move that we'll take a look at is bishop to d5. And this sets black up for a nice trap. Knight takes f7, king takes, and queen to f3. There's an x-ray. And what's important to notice here is that white gets not only gets the initiative, but he gets an attack. And he's going to see a return on this sacrifice rather quickly. King e6, this is the only move to try to glue the position together. Now we play queen to g4. Black has two moves, king f7 or king to e7. If king to f7, then we simply play queen to f5 check. If king g8, then e6, and we're winning. If king e7, then we play e6. And bishop e6, rook e1. All of white's pieces are going to come into the game. Let's say queen d7. And all white has to do here is play queen takes knight, and white is winning. So going back, If king to e7, then could you spot white's next move? Try to see if you could find it. The move is e6, a brilliant move. This gives black the option of capturing the pawn in 3 ways. Let's take a look at those variations. If bishop takes c6, then we play rook to e1, queen d7, bishop takes c6, knight takes e6, knight b3 threatening knight c5, king f7, and queen to f5 check, winning the knight on e6. So going back, if knight takes b3, then we play knight takes b3, h6, queen f5, and white is winning. There's no way to stop queen to f7 check successfully if queen to e8, queen takes bishop. And if bishop takes b3, then simply queen to f7 once again. So going back, the next move is knight takes e6, after which we play rook to e1, bishop b3, knight takes b3, queen d5, knight c5, and after knight to e5, we play queen to f5, and white is winning. For instance, g6, queen takes e5, and white proves his advantage. So going back, that means that after knight to g5, the only move available for black is queen takes knight. And this leads to a very interesting variation, which is an endgame that is favorable for white. Queen f3, castles, bishop takes e6, pawn takes, queen takes knight, queen takes c5, and now a very important move, b4. Queen d5, the only move. Queen takes queen, pawn takes knight, pawn takes c3, knight b3, and d4. And in this position, we reach one of the most thematic positions of this opening. We reach an imbalanced, utterly imbalanced endgame where I would prefer to be white with the extra piece, especially combating against the passed pawns. So here it's very important to remember the move bishop to a3. And now black has 2 ways of playing this position. He could play g6 or bishop to e7. Bishop to e7 is the old way of playing, after which we play bishop to b4, and we've basically set up the structure for our minor pieces on the queen side. Bishop f6, a4. Very important to remember this move. Now all variations lead to an advantage to white. For instance, let's see a couple of moves. If king to d7, then we play pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, rook a to d1, threatening bishop c3, and after king a6, rook f to e1. And white now has a very basic plan. If king d5, then bishop takes c3, and if king f5, then rook to d3, followed by rook to d1, and we've basically not only have we blockaded the pawns, but we're also threatening to capture them. So let's look at some other alternatives for black. Instead of king to d7, let's say black plays d3 here. Then we capture on b5. He plays d2. We play pawn takes a6. He plays c2. And now we simply play a7. And after rook to a7, we reach an endgame with up a pawn. So going back, the other move that black has here is capturing the pawn on a4. We play c6, d3, rook a4, d2, knight d2, pawn d2, rook a6, and white is clearly better. So going back, the main move here is g6, after which we play bishop to b4, once again setting up our ideal structure on the queen side, bishop to g7, a4, and now black has several moves here. If king to d7, this was a famous game between Shirov and Kasparov. We play pawn takes b5, pawn takes, rook a to d1, king s6, rook f e1, and after king to d5, we play knight to a5, a very good move. Our plan is going to be rook to d3 and rook f to d1. So going back, if pawn takes a4, then we play c6. Once again, we have that mating theme in the position. d3, rook a4, rook a6, knight d2, and after rook d1, we're going to be up a pawn in this endgame. So the main move here is d3, after which most games continue pawn takes pawn, d2, pawn takes a6, c2. This is very theoretical. Knight takes d2, bishop takes rook, rook takes bishop, rook to e8, rook c1, rook e4, bishop c3, rook c4, rook c2, rook d3, rook b2, and now a7, and we enter an endgame where we're up a pawn. Now that we know how to play against knight c5, let's see how to continue after black plays bishop to e7. So after bishop to e7, we play c3, and now black once again has the option of choosing moves. He could play knight c5, or he could castle here. If knight to c5, then we play bishop to c2, and once again black has options here. He could play d4 or bishop g4. If d4, then it's very easy to gain an advantage after we capture on d4. Knight takes, queen takes d4, knight f3, queen d1, rook d1, castles, bishop e3, and when black plays rook f to d8, we play rook f to c1. And we have a very nice position here. White is going to play knight to d4, f4, f5, king f2, so on and so forth. a4 later on, and reroute the bishop to either f3 or to e4. This is this is a wonderful position to play as white. So going back, if bishop to g4, this is a very common way of playing this position. Very important to remember the following maneuver. We play b4. Now knight to e6, queen to e2, castles, and now a4. This is the idea of the b4 move. b4 is typically a desirable move here in these structures because it helps black create a bind on these dark squares, and as a result, the minority cripples the pawn majority on the queen side. So by b4, we're also fixing the weakness on b5, and we begin to target it. Queen to d7, rook to e1, bishop h5, takes, rook a8, rook a8, rook takes rook, knight b3, knight cd8, bishop d3, c6, and in this position I prefer white. Basically what we're going to do is the following. Notice the pawn minority that white has here. It's basically frozen black's pawn majority, so that means that we're ready. We have the ability of playing on the king side. So what we're going to do is that we're going to play bishop to f5, knight to d4, g4, and so on and so forth. Actually, bishop to f5 and g4 first, and we keep the tension in the position, and slowly we improve our pieces. We play g4, h4, h5, f4, f5. White has a great position here. So going back, so now that we know what happens after knight c5, let's look at the most common move, which is castles. After black castles, we play bishop to c2, attacking the knight on e4. Black is going to play f5, bolstering his knight. We now play knight to b3, queen d7, knight f d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, c5, knight takes d6, queen takes c6, and after f3, knight g5, we've reached one of the most theoretically important positions of this whole opening. We play a4 here, rook d8, we exchange, and now the plan that I like very, very much is bishop takes g5. I think that this is the best way to reach a winning, not a winning position, but we reach a position where it's easy to understand white's play. Bishop takes g5, f4, bishop e7, and now instead of queen to d3, which I believe is a move that Magnus Carlsen played, we play queen to e2. Because with queen to e2, we play king to h1. And after king to h8, queen to e2. Now black has the option of playing either c4 or queen b6. If queen b6, then we play g4, pawn takes g4, and after queen takes g4, I like white's position. Instead, if c4, then e3, then queen e3, and not only does white have a grip on the position, not only is d5, b5, and f5 weaknesses, but we have the ability of penetrating black's position by playing rook to a7. I would prefer being white here. In summary, the Open Spanish is an opening which leads to very rich, dynamic, tactical and strategic play. With that said, I would recommend the opening for both sides. Hopefully the theory that I recommend here will aid you in your development as a chess player and also in your own tournament games. Please provide me your feedback in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and to like the video if you've enjoyed our analysis session. With that said, until next time, bye-bye.